All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here as always with Drew Dinsick. We're recording on Sunday night during a Bears-Chargers blockbuster. Next week's game will be better, I promise. Bills-Bengals, we'll get to that. But today we're going to recap everything that happened during the Sunday slate. We'll talk about the Week 9 openers and then talk some Monday Night Football Raiders-Lions to close. Drew, what was your big takeaway from Sunday's action?
Generally a good day for me. Pretty satisfied with the sides. I had a couple of stinkers for totals, but that happens. The Saints stood out in the morning as being a very, very real team. That was impressive going up. I thought they, were clearly the right side from Jump Street there. They got off to a little bit of a rocky start, and then they hit the freaking gas, and it was just... that game was over. Very cool to see the Saints actually play a complete, second half and not let the Colts back into that one. I think, the Jags win was hugely consequential for them, keeping control of the AFC South. The Panthers getting a win over the Texans was pretty satisfying for me, at least. I felt like that game should have been around to pick them, and I feel like it played two around to pick them. So happy the Panthers won, but ultimately that was a big win for that young group. And then everything else in the morning was pretty chalky. We have a new MVP favorite in Tua. I guess he didn't even really inspire me that much today. I disagree too. But Dolphins bounced back after, getting their tails handed to them on Sunday Night Football in Philly last week. That was impressive. I guess you have to give credit to the Tennessee Titans for getting Will Levis to playing at that level in 1 week. That was a surprise. He was way, way more functional than I would have expected, considering he had no preseason and only the 1 week of prep with the ones. And then, the Jets-Giants is a game that happened.
That's one of the most incredible games of football I've ever seen. And someone who needed the Jets in that game, an absolute roller coaster. I can't imagine that Dable's strategy was optimal in that second half.
No.
One, obviously, not completing a pass for a half isn't optimal. But then the end of game stuff too, both times with the field goal. I don't understand why he called timeout, because it felt like the Jets were really rushing, and it felt like someone who was on the Jets. It's like they're running out of time. It reminded me of, was it Billy Cundiff? Was he the Baltimore Ravens kicker in the 2011 AFC title game, where he comes on the field after they think Lee Evans has the touchdown, but he doesn't, and then he sprays it violently to the left from memory, and it felt like that was coming, and it almost happened on the second one, which I thought in real time had missed. And I don't think the people behind the goalpost had understood it, had gone through either. But yeah, a wild game. I don't think there's much to take out of it from a macro sense, because I don't think either of those teams are very good. I think Robert Saleh now is tier 1 coach of the year, because he, particularly with others falling around him, I think if he's able to get to 11-6, which I understand is unlikely, but that almost makes him a shoo-in, and he could win at 10-7 as well. But Wilson was so bad, they may have a new quarterback for Monday night against the Chargers. And I'm not sure Wilson. Well, we'll see. He was terrible today. I understand he made some throws at the end, but I thought he was awful. I guess because they won, they'll just stick with him, but I think that would be a terrible mistake. What do you think of the Jets going forward?
I think they're frauds in terms of having any kind of chance to make an AFC playoff picture. But boy, credit to Saleh for getting these guys to play this hard. These are, you don't luck into wins in the NFL. They are a well-coached team. The defense certainly is extremely talented. Three really impressive wins in a row now against the Broncos, Eagles, and Giants. It's just in terms of how did you do that? Not in terms of this is a team that we need to take seriously now. It's interesting that you think it's possible Wilson gets benched before the Chargers game. I'm not sure where they go. I'm not sure what they, what other options they realistically could expect to do better. I think they, the fact that they're winning probably keeps the veterans and, kind of the leaders in that locker room from really, kind of demanding change. And Zach Wilson, if he can avoid the turnovers, is going to be in some of these games. Yeah, but I don't think the Jets are for real, and I think they may hang around here on the fringes of the playoff picture, quote unquote, in the hunt, if you will. But I think the schedule doesn't necessarily get easier for them anytime soon, with some pretty tough tests down the stretch that I think will ultimately end their season.
Yeah, I think me thinking he might get benched is more that shows the divide between me just purely thinking Zach Wilson bad, get someone better, more chance to win. But when I think you're actually on the team and involved in that, and how the morale is going to be, and just walking into the building and training this week, it would just be an extremely odd thing to bench Zach Wilson after such a momentous victory. But I think that they would certainly be better off with Jacoby Brissett, or really anyone outside of Zach Wilson. Ryan Tannehill, if he's going to be available after what Will Levis showed. I think, to your point, the early slate, nothing really happened that was surprising outside of the injuries, where Kirk Cousins tears his Achilles, and that Minnesota team, which was looking very dangerous for the playoffs, for potentially upending the Lions in the North. They seem now effectively done if they're not going to have Kirk Cousins. Matthew Stafford, that looked kind of like a UCL on his thumb, and that would be big news for the Rams, and effectively end their season and send it in a different direction. So we'll see what happens there. Outside of that, I mean, Kenny Pickett, it is what it is at that point. Jacksonville are now tied for the 1 seed in the AFC with a bunch of other teams. I thought not much happened in the morning slate, and then a ton happened in the afternoon slate. Cleveland-Seattle was a wild game, which ultimately, I guess there's not much to take away, because Seattle closed 4-point favorites and won by 4 points. But and Baltimore beat Arizona, whatever. That game wasn't as close as the final score. But the other 2 games, Kansas City, Denver, Cincinnati, San Francisco. Now, Kansas City, Denver, I'm not as worried about the Chiefs there. Mahomes looked disoriented. I've never seen him like that, and he was playing very unwell, had an IV the day before, allegedly, and he certainly looked like it. And so I'm not reading too much into that. The Broncos have been trending up a little bit in any case, so I'm not too worried about the Chiefs. I think it's more a concern that they're no longer in sole possession of the 1 seed, as opposed to there's something wrong with this team. There might be something a little wrong with San Francisco, because I think that was the big result from the day overall, where they showed again that this defense isn't close to the unit that closed last season. And they also showed that their offensive line just isn't very good if Trent Williams isn't out there.
Yeah.
McCaffrey hasn't had room to run in a while now. And watching him, he's eking out these 3-yard runs where there should be nothing there. And previously, he was using his talent to turn 5-yard runs into 25-yarders. Now he's using it to turn 0-yarders into 3-yarders. And he's got nothing to work with there. Brock Purdy continues to have the shine taken off of him. I thought he was excellent in the first half, and then a 0 out of 10 in the second half, in addition to the 2 picks. Threw across his body twice. To be fair, they both worked out, and he got away with it. But that was very much the Brock Purdy experience. He seems to have this thing where, and we were talking about a little bit before we got down here, about how so many of his throws are to the deep middle of the field, between defenders, like over the head of the linebacker before it reaches the safety. And it seems like these timing routes, they're so dependent on reading the movement of the linebacker. And it seems like linebackers have figured that you can just fake going one way and then come back the other way. And that's how he threw his second pick, which effectively ended the game. So what do you make of San Francisco going forward?
Yeah, I think your points are very valid. The concern about Purdy is probably real. They get 2 weeks to get him right. And presumably Trent Williams and presumably Deebo Samuel, all these guys coming back off the bye. The Niners team was 4-4 going into the bye last year, Jay. They lost some embarrassing games early in the season, including a 2-touchdown loss to the Falcons, an absolute just throttling at the hands of the Chiefs in primetime early in the season. And, by the time we got to the end of the season, like, they found their final form and they were absolutely nasty. So I think that's probably still a reasonable expectation. And I guess the maybe more important point is the NFC is there are 6 teams that are very comfortably, in my opinion, playoff teams in the NFC. And none of them are so good that they're going to run away with the 1 seed and put San Francisco in a position where continuing to pile these losses up has them on the road for the second and third week of the playoffs. So I think, the fact that Seattle got a very hard fought win doesn't help Niners. The fact that the Cowboys look good doesn't help the Niners. The fact that the Eagles got an ugly win doesn't help the Niners. But at the same time, like the class of the West in the East, the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Niners, the Seahawks, and I would put Detroit and I would put the Saints now in the mix for 6 clear playoff teams in the NFC, and everybody else is either wildly flawed or just flat out bad. And so there's going to be a 7th team, I guess. And realistically, if the Niners don't get the 1 seed, they're probably going to get the 2 seed. And that means they'll probably draw the 7th seed and be 10-point favorites in the first round of the playoffs at home. So I don't really think there's much like long-term worry here, but teams tend to be able to self-scout during the bye week, and the Niners had a really tough stretch here of tricky travel right into their bye, and this is probably a good time for them to do some self-scouting and some self-evaluation, and try to clean up some of the aspects of the play right now that's just not impressive. So the talent's still there. I'm guessing at full health, this is still going to be a team that I'm expecting in the NFC Championship game against the winner of Cowboys Eagles, which is a fun match that we have coming up here. But yeah, I just don't think anyone's running away from them.
No, I think the concern is that 2-3 weeks ago they were red odds to get the 1 seed in the NFC, sure, and their average outcome was like 13 or 14 wins. And now they're going to be in a dogfight just to win their division. And if they don't win their division, then all of a sudden you've got Brock Purdy going on the road 3 times in the playoffs against what should be relatively difficult opposition. And so that's the concern. And their schedule, they have an easy-ish. Well, they don't really have an easiest patch, because here's the thing: so they have the bye week now, which is much, much needed. And then 3 of their first 4 games out of the bye, road games at Jacksonville, at Seattle, at Philadelphia. Like if they go 1-2 in those games, then all of a sudden they're in huge trouble. And then they're fighting to make the playoffs, which presumably they will. And then the schedule gets easier after that. They'll be material favorites in all of their last 5 games. But there are some concerns around the Niners. Let's see how they look, though, when they get Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel back, presumably after the bye. That is now a massive game in Week 10 at Jacksonville, because there's going to be 1 seed implications, I think, for both conferences out of that one. All right, before we get to the Week 9 openers, 2 of the NFL's best quarterbacks face off this week on Sunday night. Don't miss Josh Allen and the Bills facing off against the rejuvenated and spry and sprinting Joe Burrow and the Bengals in Cincinnati. Coverage of this AFC clash begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, let's talk Week 9. Broncos, Lions, Jags, 49ers all on bye. Titans, Steelers, the Thursday night clash to kick off the week. The Will Levis looked phenomenal. I know you mentioned it briefly. Some of the throws that he was making was just absolutely pristine. So good for you, Will. I think the marquee games, there's a few of them. One, Chiefs 2-point favorites against the Dolphins in Frankfurt. Mm-hmm. The Ravens are 5-point favorites home to the Seahawks. And then the Sunday night game is immense. Bengals 2-point favorites home to the Bills, which surprised me. I thought that was going to be more like pick. To me, the line, though, that jumped out the most out of all of these was that the Falcons are only 3.5-point favorites home to the Vikings. The Vikings don't have a quarterback. How is that line not bigger? I don't get that at all.
There's buzz that there may be a trade. I don't know that Minnesota's going to just give up on the season. Okay. We'll see. There's an abundance of quarterbacks in the desert, Jay. I don't know if you caught any of that. That Josh Dobbs performance, just hellacious beat on any laying the points with the Ravens. A 4% onside kick recovery leading to 3 points to get that one home was a rough way to end the afternoon. But all that said, that does stand out. I think realistically, that's probably like a 6-pointer, and we don't really know what's going on with the quarterback situation in Atlanta either. R. Smith came out after the game and implied it wasn't a performance thing that they benched Ritter, but that feels like maybe coach speak, and they just want to look at the tape and decide next week if they're going to go with Heineke for the duration here. But it was, in my opinion, at least that that's probably going to go out to 6 once we get a little bit more information on who exactly or what the exact plans are in Minnesota. I was surprised that the Kansas City Chiefs came off of 3. There wasn't anything game breaking that we learned in that Broncos game against the Chiefs. It's just that Pat Mahomes is mortal. He can get sick just like us. And so, I think, a cleaner week of practice for him and, space from the whatever illness he's dealing with is probably good enough to put that back at 3. So I'm inclined to bet KC at 2.5 if that's what we get when it's, once limits start coming up here. And then similarly, surprised that Dallas Philly is at 3. Philly is at the very, very top of their, kind of price point right now, market wide, in my opinion. I think it's time to start selling some Philly with their schedule coming up, combined with just in general, this idea that they're like a clean 3 points better than Dallas. I don't see it. So I'm going to be on the Cowboys in that fun Dallas Philly game. But no, overall, kind of excited for this week of games coming up. And, it's going to be tough not to just hold your nose and play Green Bay and Atlanta with the quarterback situations going on with Minnesota and the LA Rams.
Yeah. With Cowboys Eagles, I think the big thing there is that, and I know his stats were incredible and he got the job done, but Jalen Hurts is literally like limping to the line of scrimmage. Like he's not right at all. He's not close to right. And he was able to get by today against the woeful Commanders defense and A.J. Brown. By the way, A.J. Brown's still 12-1 to win Offensive Player of the Year. I'm not convinced he should really have longer odds than McCaffrey at this point. Like the Niners are 5-3 and scuffling, and McCaffrey can't do anything on the ground. A.J. Brown has 939 yards in 8 games and 5 touchdowns and is surging. And that team is going to be playing a lot of brutal games the next month or so where presumably they're going to have to be throwing. So, and also I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be running the ball a ton when he's limping. So he may even need to be more of a passer. I don't understand that price at all. And really just because of Jalen's health and also the fact that it's going to be washed away because they won the game by 7 points, whatever. But like the Commanders were favorites in that game at stages in the second half. And Sam Howell, until he made 2 absolutely brutal throws on 3rd and 4th down on the key drive, Sam Howell was dicing the Eagles up. And with the way that Prescott and the Cowboys have been rolling the past 2 weeks, and also just how Prescott eviscerated the Eagles when they played at the end of last year. I think that the Cowboys are going to be able to move the ball through the air against the Eagles. And I think that the Cowboys defense, which hasn't been as all-world as it was the first couple of weeks, but looked pretty good against the Rams in the first half. And I'm more confident in their defense than I am in Philly. So I like the call there. Anything else that jumped out, or do you want to move to Raiders-Lions?
Yeah, let's talk about Raiders Lions. Everything else is going to be injury related. Like I don't have a take at all on Buffalo Cincinnati and where that's going to be. That was a big move off the look ahead, and I'm going to need to rewatch Niners Bengals to see if that wasn't just a little bit of a noisy outcome in some ways. So that one's the one that I'm going to probably spend the most time next couple of days trying to crack into.
Yeah, I know like a lot has changed since the AFC divisional round, but what were the Bills 6-point favorites home to Cincy, and now they're 2-point dogs in Cincy. Like it's mostly this. I know the Bills defense is more banged up. The Bengals are also bizarrely the healthier team at this point, and Burrow is back. He's just 100% Burrow, and zero concerns about his health at the moment. But yeah, I'm a little surprised by that because -2 is saying the Bengals are slightly better than the Bills on neutral. Not sure I can quite get there yet. So I'd be on the Bills at +2. But let's talk Raiders-Lions. I don't feel great about this, but I don't understand why the Raiders are 7.5-point dogs. I've been operating with the idea that the Lions are about 2.5 points better than your average team on neutral, and the Raiders are about 1.5 points worse when Jimmy G is a quarterback. And I'm not sure if the Raiders' defensive performance was just so atrocious against Chicago that has manifestly changed their rating. But I thought this was going to be, more like 6.5. I'm surprised it's on the other side of 7. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the market isn't really giving Jimmy G credit at all.
Yeah.
Like this was like 8.5, 9 when it was truly not known whether Jimmy G was going to go, and it was like probably going to be Aiden O'Connell. And now that we know it's Jimmy at 7.5, doesn't seem like a fair adjustment. Your kind of setup there is it's exactly where I'm at with this team. I think I am higher than market on Lions, and I'm at like 3 points better than an average team. But the Raiders are, Raiders are fine. They're not a good team, but this should be 6.5 by my numbers. So the fact that we're across the touchdown has me into some Raiders here. As far as like how the game state will go and how how this will play out, it was tough to watch the Lions Ravens tape from last week and come away with any conclusion about the Lions just not getting out physicaled in that game, which was a surprise. And they lost in the trenches on both offense and defense, which was, kind of an unexpected outcome from that game. And, definitely the fact that you have Max Crosby on the field for the Raiders defensively is enough of a potential chaos merchant to really impact what Jared Goff wants to do. And then on the flip side, if you're getting pass pro for Jimmy G, he's fine. Like he's going to be able to score. He'll get some, get them into the 17 to 20 point range. So you basically just need to kind of put a decent lid on the Lions output, keep them in like 28 point range, and you got a decent shot to get this cover. And I think the Raiders can do that.
Yep. Amon-Ra St. Brown is also questionable as well with an illness. So it seems like he should be okay to go, but that's a little bit of uncertainty there too. So, yeah, I don't understand the disrespect for Jimmy G. Whatever you think of him, he is a very competent quarterback in ways that Aiden O'Connell and Brian Hoyer haven't demonstrated at all. So I would have thought this would precipitate a bigger movement and that it should be at worst 7, and then I would have thought on the other side of 7, but we'll see. Maybe the market is seeing something in Detroit that I do not. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Please rate and subscribe if you're listening to us in podcast form. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick. We'll see you tomorrow.